The idea now is to use or to describe JSON files and how can we use them in Python or in JavaScript. JSON files mainly are used as the, let's call them as a lightweight data files which can be used to store data or more commonly to transfer data like in APIs, like between apps. And I will demonstrate it in Python where and in JavaScript in the client side. In the Python, I will have a file. I will show it to you. So this is the Python, it's called Collab, and I start with this file. It's a user.json, and you can see here the JSON file. I have users. For each user, I have ID, name, email, and age. I have one, two, and two users that I inserted myself. And this is the JSON file. This is how we can get it. And you see that I here have four users. Let's take this and show you how can I read it in Python, and then how can I create new users in the JSON file and can save it in the JSON file, and we will see it. So I start by reading the JSON file, and you can see that it read what I have in the JSON file: import JSON, open JSON, and display the data that I loaded from the JSON file. And you can see all the data. Now, if I remove one of them or two of them, let's remove me from here. If it will help me, okay, let me do it or not. Here, now save it and let's run it. You can see now I have only two users in the JSON file. So let's continue. Now I can create a server. The port is 8000. I create a server so I can use the JSON file using HTML and Google Colab. So I start a server, and this is a server in the port of 8000. It's already in use, and you can see how I can read it using HTML in the Google Colab. What I do is just, you can see it here, I run this, I get the response from the server which I started here, and I get the response from the JSON file. I get the element of user list. Here it's the list I get from the JSON. I have ID, name, email, and age in the JSON file. Data.users.fetch. Yes, it gets the response from the JSON, and I append it, and then I fetch user data. Okay, so I'll get the response from the server that I started from the user.json, which is the JSON file I have, and the data I read it from the JSON. So the data holds what there is in the JSON file. Okay, this. Okay, and the user list is from the ID. So to this list, I will insert all the data. So how do I insert? I let user div. I get the data. From the data, I get the users. For each user, I fetch to the user list, to the div. I fetch to the div another user. Okay, and here it is. Now let's create a server, but this server I can use the post method in order to manipulate the JSON file. Let's say, for example, to add users. Okay, so now again I start the server. Now I use another port because the other port is already taken, and now I handle the post request. I get the request, I get the read, I get the post data to the data. I open the JSON to read and write, user data, data user dot append. So user data user dot append, I append the data I get. Okay. and here's the right. So I run this one. The server is already running because I already ran the code, and here is the data. Now it lets me see what I do. I There's the div which holds all the data I read from the JSON, and after this one holds the form to add another user. And how do I add another user? Again, I listen to the new port 8001. I get the data from the JSON, the users.json, the data I have here, and user list is getting this element, which I will manipulate or read all the data from the JSON to this div. And again, I get the data user for each, and I fetch the data to the div. Okay. Now, when I do submit on this one, when I add a user, when I submit this form, what will happen? I will get the name, email, and age. I put here name, email, and age, and I get a new one, a new user ID date.now, just a random, uh, let's say one to one value, so it will be unique. The name I inserted, and the email the user inserted, and the age, and it converts from string to int. Now I try to post this data to the server. I use the method of post, okay, and JSON dot stringify the new user I just created. Update data. I do update the data and I fetch. Okay. So let's see how it goes. So let's add a new one. Let's call it my name. A dot this is my name, and the age is 12. Let's add a user. It should work. It worked for me. Let's do something. Oh, here it is. So you see how it added the new uh, users. Now, if I will go to the JSON file, you will see the new users here. I just added. So you saw how I use Python to use the JSON as a, let's call it a NoSQL database. And now I can take this file and take it to another application and use the data as I want. Now let's see how can I use client-side JavaScript with JSON and use local storage to save data on the local machine, namely on this computer, on this browser. It's very locally, but this is a client side, so it's quite hard to save it permanently and without using the server. So this is the code in JavaScript, like you saw in just in the HTML of the in Python. So okay, in Python and also used HTML. So this is the HTML, and here I get the JSON. Now the JSON is in here in the code itself. This is JSON, but I also get the JSON data which I stored in the user data in the local storage. So I start with only this and I save in the local storage new data that you will see. So I get the data will save as a user data, and I create a basic JSON. So here I uh, uh, I display the data, this data, or from the local storage, or this. So it will be and, let's say I will show this and this. Here I do it and save user data local storage dot set item user nekuda user definition of data, because here. Name, email, and age. New user. Here is the new user. And I push the new user to the data. And then I save user data, which is this one. And I save it to local storage. So I add to the local storage the new user. And then I say display user data, which takes the JSON and print it to the user. And the JSON, the data I get, is or from the local storage, which I use to store the new users, or the basic data. This is the basic JSON data I get. So you can see that the JSON is inside the code. It's not different file, it's not permanent, it's a client side. So this is the problem with using a client side. But okay, let's see how it goes. So when I run this code, so you can see I have some storage data already. This one I added. So let's add a new user here and the new email and with a new age like 13. So let's add a user and here it is. Now if I close it and open it again, the user will stay there. Namely, it won't be deleted. The reason is that the local storage won't be deleted until or the user will delete the local storage, or the user will use uh, another browser or another computer. You can see that in this browser I don't have the data I added. I need to add a new one. But again, I will see it only on this browser, but on other browsers I won't see it. Now again, if I take this and put it here, I will see the new user, but in here here I don't see the new user I just added, because other browsers have different, let's say, using of local storage. So it should be, in order to save data, I should be on the same computer with the same browser, such that the user didn't delete manually the data I saved in his computer. So if I am the same browser, the same computer, and the user didn't delete the data, it will stay there in the local storage. Okay, so I showed you how to use JSON file with the Python with a file. I really had a file, and in JavaScript as a client side on the code itself and not as a separate file. And I use local storage in the client side to save the data, and here in Python I use to save the data in the file itself, which is maybe more useful because I can take this file and use it in other uh, projects. Now JSON is used, I can use it, as you can see, as a data storage. I can use it as a configuration file with parameters like in different projects for configuration. I can use it in API for configurations on parameters, and I can use it as a NoSQL lightweight data storage. I don't have really unique uh, things that I can do with this storage, like in the SQL. I cannot manipulate very effectively with uh, queries, but it's a lightweight database which is maybe convenient for lightweight data. So this is some word about JSON data structure, JSON files. Thank you very much. Python and JavaScript, and that's it.